Right. I was born into a Mormon church. My dad was my biological father was Mormon. When we moved to Hamilton, Ontario, we started going to a Mormon church, and for certain religious reasons, my mom decided to leave. And what's really cool is we moved a lot. So my mom had divorced my dad. And once we left the Mormon church, we didn't go back. And we moved quite frequently. And every single time that we moved, I met a new Christian friend. So how that happened, I have no clue. Actually, I know, probably good.
So being raised in another country, I was brought up in the atheistic view, not atheistic view, yep. But I was taught that there's no such thing as God, and ghosts and spirits and such things don't exist, and if you think otherwise, then there's something wrong with you, and you should go with them into a hospital and get your things checked out. Yeah. So that was the norm of the country where I grew up.
Christian all my life, lived in a Christian home, got no crazy U-turn in my life, which would signify my rebellion or anything. However, I think I'm rebellious in nature, but I've never had any significant moment where I've turned and run away from God.
I grew up in a Catholic/Serbian Orthodox home. My family was not very devoted to serving God, so I grew up believing in God, but not really pursuing an active spiritual life. Towards the end of high school, I got to a point where I was thinking, okay, this is a little empty. These things that we are investing our time in have no value and no worth. And as I was finishing high school, I really started to get some longing. I knew that God was missing somehow in my life, and I didn't know what that meant. So as I started to pursue reading the Bible a bit more and going to church more often, I just kept getting a prompting, a sensing in my spirit that I just needed to keep pursuing God, that there was something that I still didn't understand.
I met a bunch of Christian friends, and of course we went to conferences and did all those crazy things. And there was this one time when I'd seen in all my friends this happiness and this joy and this peace that I didn't possess. And I didn't understand why they had it and why I didn't, because I was going to church and I was praying and I was, listening to the sermons and trying to apply as I could and doing all the things that they seemed to be doing, but I didn't have what they had, and I wanted whatever joy and peace that they possessed.
I've always gone to church. So I've always thought of myself as a Christian, and I've always believed in God and Jesus and the whole story. And so I went to Sunday school and all that. But I was baptized when I was in grade 8, which looking back I think was a little too young, because I don't necessarily think I really knew what I was doing. I thought it was pretty cool and that I wanted to do it, but we didn't have any baptism classes or stuff like that, so I don't think I really completely understood.
Well, after elementary school, I went to a Mennonite high school, and it was in high school that I also I started attending church. It was my grandmother that encouraged me to go to church because I knew it made her happy. But it was through that and through some difficult times in high school that I realized that God is the only one that's really going to be able to help me. And so in grade 11, I was baptized, and I made the decision to want to follow God, but I still didn't fully know what that meant. I didn't, I didn't fully have my mind and my heart and my soul transformed the way they needed to be.
I always thought I was a Christian, and I always followed God. God was always in my mind. God was always in everybody's mind, because God is your subconscious. Very cool. There's a verse to back that up. Can't think of it now.
The moment in time is something that was very, I guess you can say, extraordinary that happened. It was a prayer that I prayed when I was the age of 12, and it was answered. And I thought, you know what, because the prayer was answered and usually it wouldn't have happened, and it must have been God. That was my first step into faith. And then from going to a conference where I really heard God's voice speaking to me, and that's where I realized, you know what, this is something real, and I'm going to follow Him with all my heart. And yeah, so that's when I became a Christian and realized that
2 years ago, so when I was about 17, going through high school, I realized how empty not having God would be. I realized that I could not really follow my parents anymore, and I would have to make a decision on my own to become a fully devoted follower of Christ. And so I did, and ever since then I've had a fire burning inside me for God, more than just I go to church and stuff. And I've realized that that does not make me a Christian, but having a relationship with God is what He's really called me for.
I used to be on the fence, and what I mean by that is I didn't fully believe that Jesus was the way, the truth, and the life. I thought that, maybe everybody, you can get to God anyway, maybe Hindus are right and Buddhists are right, but I had that desire for God, I just didn't have that foundation. So as an act, it describes Holy Spirit baptism. I had that prayer time done over me, and it changed my life because I was in a really difficult time, just emotionally and spiritually, and I was like, Jesus is the only one that's going to be able to save me from where I'm at right now, and I've never been the same since. So 2 years ago.
I think it took a few hard things happening in my life, things that if you had asked me, I could never have imagined dealing with. I would have thought I would have broken down and become this angsty teen. But having had those things happen and seeing the way I dealt with it, I think made me realize that I can do this because God is there and He's with me. And when I should be really angry, I wasn't. So I think that was high school. So eventually I ended up going to this one conference, and they were playing a movie, and on the screen they had sort of videos of Passion of the Christ. But Passion of the Christ wasn't it. It was similar things. And they were playing the song, I never knew how much it cost to lay my sin upon the cross. And I just, at that moment, I realized that this man, and I have a really difficult time with, not anymore, but I used to have a difficult time with men not being who I thought that they should be, but this man died for me. And I just was processing that, and that he did that extreme, he went through all that torture and all that, just so that I could live. And I just thought that that was phenomenal. I can't even put it into words, it was indescribable.
Because in my very first week of university, I met a whole host of amazing Christians my age, people who were dedicated to serving and following Christ. And when I met them and saw what they had, I realized that my perspective about God and about Christ was not as it should be, and that had been the missing piece. And as I hung out with them, as I read my Bible more, as I saw genuine Christianity happening in real people's lives, God opened the eyes of my heart, and He revealed Himself to me. I heard the gospel, and everything in life seemed to make sense in that moment, and that was when I dedicated my life to Christ.
That was the moment when I finally realized, and I'm like, yes, okay, I understand that I need to live for You, and why. So.
And ever since then, it's been a growing experience.
Yeah.
So from someone who didn't believe in God at all to believing that there's a God, and then getting to know Jesus Christ and how great His love is. So yeah, definitely it was